Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 25 team in my 2025 NFL Deep Dive series. It's the Atlanta Falcons. Make sure to hit that like button. It really helps push out the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already. Atlanta is a team that is just, I feel, riddled by mistakes from the front office and the coaching staff. They have so much talent. They've had a lot of talent for a long time. Even going back to the Matt Ryan days, it's hard to find rosters where you don't have a handful at least of players that you're super excited about. They've done a great job over the years of building up a really good offensive line. They've drafted weapons pretty well. They haven't really gotten the most out of Kyle Pitts, but I mean, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. They got Michael Penix coming up. It's going to be a real test for their offensive coordinator to make sure that they get the right guy in that situation. They are choking kind of like the dog is right now. That is crazy. You all right there, buddy? I know, the Falcons kind of make me feel sick too, because man, do they just not have the ability to harness all the talents that are out there. And when you have the dynamic and the diverse set of weapons that they have, and we'll get into all that, you'd expect them to achieve a lot more than they have over the years, especially last year. You know, when they had Kirk Cousins, they kind of all flopped on them right there. Now Michael Penix comes in. He looked pretty good when he was actually playing last year, but you know, now he's getting the full year. Now this is really his team. Flipping that entire offense from the right hand to the left hand is not insignificant. And the head coach, Raheem Morris, not exactly known for having a lot of success as a head coach, changed up the defensive coordinator there, so maybe we'll see him take on more of a CEO role. They've done a fantastic job of building up a great secondary that we're going to get to, with A.J. Terrell, with Jesse Bates, with Clark Phillips, and even Mike Hughes has stepped up big. They drafted two safeties in Xavier Watson, Billy Bowman, who are going to get significant playing time and will have a significant impact by my estimation come this regular season. But the key part of this team that we're going to keep coming back to, I think, is how they develop these players and how they put them in positions to succeed. And that starts with the coaching staff and the head coach here, Raheem Morris, who gets a 71 grade for me. That's 29th in the league. I just never really liked the hire. When he was brought in Tampa for his first head coaching run, like, Jesus, decade and a half ago at this point, I got it then. You know, he was viewed as like this up and coming, young, great defensive mind. It just didn't really work out there. He never really got the most out of his talent. And then he came here, and his first year in Atlanta, it was really the same story. You know, he wasn't getting the most out of the talent in terms of, you know, a culture building standpoint. Certainly didn't improve the defense at all. You know, I think a lot of that got blamed on the lack of a pass rush off the edge, which is why they invested so highly in the draft in that position. I feel like that was sort of scapegoating that aspect of the defense in particular, because there are really talented players, as you're going to see coming up, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and in particular in the secondary. So there is that going for them, but is Raheem Morris head coaching material? And when you have, you know, you talk about the elite defensive mind. Talked about this with Aaron Glenn. Is Aaron Glenn elite defensive mind? I think Aaron Glenn's in a very similar situation to what Raheem Morris was when he got the job in Tampa, where a lot of good things were happening, and then he gets the head coaching job, and it's sort of, let's hope that we're right about him. I think people were wrong about Raheem Morris. What he did as defensive coordinator and as a position coach, as a consultant, as a quality control, whatever positions he's held since leaving that position in Tampa, has been, you know, it was good enough apparently to give him a second chance, which I think is fine, I guess, but it was a huge risk. I think it's a huge risk that is backfiring, you know, because I think Atlanta has a very talented roster that had no business not being, you know, winning that division and at least winning a playoff game. Like, they had the talent that was there, and that does fall on Raheem Morris, especially when the defense side of the ball was not improved one iota when he was brought in. If the defense showed improvements and maybe the offense took a step back, then you can sort of understand, okay, the team kind of balanced itself out with moving on from Arthur Smith, an offensive coach, to Raheem Morris, a defense the entire time, and the defense just didn't get better. a lot of pressure on him this year. I believe he definitely is on the hot seat. I think defensive coaches in general, when they get head coaching jobs, are on the hot seat a lot faster because they want the big offensive mind that's out there. Now, Zach Robinson is the offensive coordinator. He gets 19th in the league, an 81 grade. Bottom half of the league. That third tier of offensive coordinators. I think this year is going to be really telling that they've committed to Michael Penix Jr. We're going to see how they interact with one another, how adjusting the offense, because people don't really talk about this all that much, but being a left-handed quarterback does change the way that plays are designed, where the route combinations happen and all that. You've now basically flipped your offensive line to now Caleb McGarry's your backside pass protection as opposed to Jake Matthews. So how does that change how you run your offense? It kind of becomes a bit like wiping with your left hand, for the lack of a better term, when you make that change from a right-handed quarterback to a left-handed quarterback, especially when historically Zach Robinson, as far as I can remember and know, it's been right-handed quarterbacks. So that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment in how they make those changes throughout the offseason and into training camp and through the preseason is going to be something definitely that has to be watched. But I think Michael Penix, we'll get to my stuff on him in a bit. He is getting a real great opportunity here because the offense has tons of talent for Zach Robinson to work with and really scheme around. So we'll see how Zach Robinson goes about doing that and bringing over that, Sean McVay style offense. Great talent out of the backfield, really deep talent out of the backfield, a really good wide receiver group. How he can finally maybe figure out a way to get Kyle Pitts to achieve his potential. Unless he gets traded. There's been a lot of trade talks around him, so we'll see how that works out. If they do keep him, how is Zach Robinson going to get him more involved and more consistently involved and play more to his skill set? Is he going to be just a straight-up slot receiver? Will they use him in that sense and have somebody else come out and play a traditional tight end role? That is yet to be seen. Raheem Morris changed up the defensive coordinator part by bringing in Jeff Ulbrich, who was with the Jets previously. Ulbrich came 14th, just basically smack dab in the middle of the league, maybe a little bit above average for defensive coordinators. I think that there's a lot of potential there. I just think that it's tough to judge what a guy does in that Jets organization when it was being run for that period of time that he was there. Because, when he was with, I believe he was with the 49ers at first. I think that he's a good talent from a coaching perspective. Now, how he interacts with Raheem Morris, I think Raheem Morris wanted to bring in somebody with sort of the pedigree of Jeff Ulbrich to help improve the defense. So maybe he can not be so focused on the defense and focus more about building and being a CEO style coach and expanding that horizon, not just being so hyper focused on the defense side of the ball, taking on that more of a Mike Tomlin style role where, Tomlin has had Terrell Austin and he's had Brian Flores and he's had a lot of these talented defensive coaches there where he doesn't need to be such a micromanager on one side of the ball in particular. And I think that helps I think that's really good for a defensive minded head coach in particular, because it allows them to take a approach of having the culture be their vocal point. I think defensive coaches in particular are really good at building cultures of toughness, of ruggedness and aggressiveness, maybe more so than an offensive coach. I feel like offensive coaches have a habit, especially in the modern day, of becoming a much more finesse type of a team. And I think Atlanta would really benefit from having some toughness and grittiness being part of what they do as a team. I think that they have the pieces to make that happen and also to mix in some of the finesse here and there. But I think you want to invoke some toughness and aggressiveness into this team to help them to get to that next level that they really haven't been able to get to. And I want to see if Raheem Morris can pull that off and if he's willing to relinquish some power there in more of a play calling sense to Jeff Ulbrich in order to pull that off. That's something that has to be watched, and I don't have a lot of faith in it, clearly, because they are ranked this low. I think that Raheem Morris may just be one of those guys who is just better being a coordinator type of a coach rather than a head coach. But I have been wrong before, and I'm willing to be wrong again. It's just there's nothing on Raheem Morris's head coaching resume to this point in his career that could lead me to believe that this is going to be any different than what we saw in Tampa, which was just a lot of mediocrity until he gets fired. Now this is the part of the video where we come in with an ad break, but I don't have any ads because I guess people don't love me enough to make me be someone worthy of sponsorship. So it's up to you guys to help me get there. And that's how you do it, by subscribing, by liking the video, by sharing your comments in the comment section below, all of your thoughts. And now let's get back to the video. So let's talk about the quarterbacks here. And it's Michael Penix Jr. He gets a 75 grade for me, tied for 28th. It looks up to like this point that he's going to be the starter with Kirk Cousins being his backup. Now, I think Kirk Cousins initially comes in as the better quarterback. Not by a whole lot, not by a significant amount, but I think that Kirk Cousins, in terms of creating a nicer floor, is the better option right now. The ceiling, obviously, Kirk Cousins is as good as he's ever going to be. He's not going to be in any better of a quarterback than what he is. So that 81 grade, that's as good as he's ever going to be. Michael Penix at least has the potential to grow throughout the year and excel much past this 75 grade into like that top 20 quarterback conversation. Because, he was drafted really highly. They think a lot of him. They put a lot of investment into him. So this was always going to be the thing that was really going to happen at this point, that they felt they get their hands on him. And the play that he did get out there, it was sort of just exemplary of what you expect out of a rookie quarterback who you draft in the top 10 when he doesn't play a whole lot. He's just sort of playing sparingly. He was fantastic when he wasn't under pressure. He was horrific when he was. The play action was very, very good. That helps to have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier back there. He was able to execute the deep and the short game really well when he was out there. He wasn't afraid to make big-time throws. Didn't really put the ball in all that much danger either. So that's something that is a real positive coming into this season. An adjusted completion percentage of 70.4, which is that's okay. You'd like that to be a little bit higher, like for him to put the ball a little bit more accurately out there, give his receivers a chance. He's got some really good weapons out there. The intermediate game, just average. You would hope that improves as they maybe put some more packages out there for a guy like Kyle Pitts, for example, to work that intermediate level. You got Darnell Mooney, who works that deep ball really well. You got Drake London, who really is, he's not some big speedy receiver. He's kind of like what you get out of Mike Evans, for example, in Tampa Bay, where he's going to work everywhere on the field really well and be a nice catch radius, sure-handed guy, and we'll get to him. Obviously, finding that third wide receiver, like that scrappy slot guy. Maybe it's Ray McLeod. Maybe it's just Bijan Robinson. You run a lot of those, the two running backs. You have Tyler Algier in the backfield. You split Bijan out. It'll be interesting to see how they work that into play and how Michael Penix spreads the ball around, because he does have a lot of mouths here to feed. And I think that it's going to be beneficial for him that he has that many, because then it allows Zach Robinson as a coach to create certain packages and certain plays that are very specific to certain talents, so that Michael Penix can maybe get into a better rhythm, focus on timing more so than having to navigate an entire defense, every single play, getting to his second, third, and fourth reads and all that, create an offense that's simplified and then expand it throughout the year to help build his confidence up. I think that's something they're very capable of doing. And I think all in all, it'll allow Michael Penix, because Michael Penix, when he did have that type of offense where it was at Washington, very package-based around certain players that he executed very well, and he excelled tremendously those years at Washington compared to what he was doing before. You concern yourself, obviously, with his age and some injuries and all that kind of stuff, but I think that they put together a roster that will fit his skill set really well. Outside of what you're getting from the offensive line in terms of backside and front side protection. I think that could be something of a concern, just because we'll get to those offensive linemen when we cover the offensive line, but it was a very well put together offensive line because of the certain skill sets and what they represented in those positions. And now you've flipped it, so now people are kind of out of place there a bit. So we'll see how he interacts with that, and we'll see how much he's really given. I think like I said, I hope throughout the year he's given more. I hope they don't try to just have him be out there and try to be, Joe Burrow right away. I think what you saw Washington do last year with Jaden Daniels, where things started simple and then it just slowly expanded and expanded and expanded throughout the year. And then, as it expanded, you kind of saw, the production kind of fall off a bit for a couple of games there, until eventually it picked back up because it got back into a rhythm with something a little bit more complicated. Was able to watch the film and see how things interacted, and he had some real game time, real experience in that. I think using that same strategy with Michael Penix could yield similar results. He's obviously not the athlete that Jaden Daniels is, so you're going to have to focus a lot more on the passing aspect and being a pocket passer. He has enough athleticism to get in and out of the pocket, but he's not that type of quarterback where you're expecting him to contribute as a runner the way you would Jaden Daniels, or the way that you would with Anthony Richardson or something like that, some of those younger quarterbacks out there. But it does look good long term by my estimation. I just think that the growing pains early on could affect early on success. That's all. And he has some fantastic weapons here. Their weapons group for me is ranked 6th in the whole league. It has got talent for days out here. We'll start with the number 1, the number 2 wide receiver, and that's number 1 is Drake London. He was the 8th overall pick a couple of years ago. First receiver taken in his draft over Garrett Wilson. And last year, 100 catches, almost 1,300 yards, just 9 touchdowns, almost double-digit touchdowns. Only 328 yards after the catch, so he's very much, he's gonna run a good route. He's gonna be a sure-handed guy, a good contested catch guy. 22 contested catches last year, almost 58% of the total contested catch targets. Only had 5 drops, less than 5% drop rate. That's a really good number for a guy who got 149 targets last year. A 94.1 quarterback rating when he's targeted. We talked about this a little bit with Penix, is that Drake London sort of your do-it-all at every level receiver. Good deep ball, that's where the contested catch really comes into play. You throw that up for him on the deep ball, and he'll go up and he'll get it and he'll win that contested catch. He can run the short routes, use his body and his wingspan to get to that ball before the cornerback does. And pretty good intermediate too. Not someone behind the line of scrimmage. You're not going to see a lot of wide receiver screens from him because he's just not that kind of athlete. That's a role for somebody else. What he does have is he's got like that bigger body, but he can play in the slot. Took almost 40% of his snaps from the slot last year. I was very surprised to see that number and how often he was lined up in the slot last year. It's sort of like having how the Bengals had Tyler Boyd for those years, like that bigger slot receiver. You see it with CeeDee Lamb to a degree in Dallas, and having the ability to have Drake London with his physicality, his size, playing in the slot, it does create some really serious matchup issues, and it forces teams to have certain packages on the defense that they may not necessarily need for any other team. It forces them to specialize against you for a week at a time, and that can create some real advantages for you on offense, create some confusion on the defensive side of the ball that way. So it's a really great player to have, and he's really developed well over the years, incrementally getting better and better, and that's why he gets that 92 grade for me. One of the best wide receivers in all the league by my estimation, and I expect these numbers to really hold this year. These true wide receiver 1 numbers, 100 catches, 300 yards, double-digit touchdowns. I expect this to hold in the contested catches. Hopefully he can maintain that pace of being someone that reliable that they're willing to throw those balls up to. And if he can improve even on the total contested catch percentage, another huge bonus for this offense and the offense's production. Then you get to Darnell Mooney, who early on in his career in Chicago was like, people were like, man, this guy's an amazing receiver. It did end up being kind of like he was miscast as a wide receiver 1 there. And then he came here, and as a wide receiver 2, he settled in fantastically. And again, really, playing everywhere out there, 992 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had 100 targets. Not a great contested catch guy, but he was 100.9 in passer rating. Great deep balls, great immediates, and great short. A little bit better than what you would expect from Drake London. You kind of want him to be better behind the line of scrimmage because he is that faster guy, a lot slimmer. So you'd like for him to be a little bit more of a fast, agile athlete behind the line of scrimmage on some screen passes, but that just, it just wasn't his game, and that's okay. You got enough guys that can pull that off. And it's really an open battle for that wide receiver 3 spot for this team. You got the rookie Nick Nash, who I loved when I was watching the stuff that I saw of him. I thought he should have gone way higher. I thought he should have been like a day 2 draft pick. Just didn't work out, and I think they landed a real sleeper wide receiver here. You see it from the 76 grade. One of the best grades I gave to rookie wide receivers this year. I think it's fantastic. Maybe it's not going to be something he's going to be able to do right away, but I love the potential of having him out there in some role. Ray McCloud, though, I think from a skill set perspective, is probably going to start the season as wide receiver 3, be your slot wide receiver, your primary slot receiver, run a lot of gadget stuff when you're in that type of formation, when Kyle Pitts is playing a more traditional tight end role. But then you kick Kyle Pitts out to be a bigger slot receiver as well, and hope that he can finally reach that potential, because he just has fallen so significantly short from what people expected him to be. I think that there was a bit of a redundancy when they drafted Drake London, because I think a lot of people felt that they sort of served the same role in an offense of what you would expect them to do. Which is weird because Kyle Pitts was drafted as a tight end, but I feel like that sort of has come true to a large degree, and Drake London being a much more traditional receiver in terms of his skill set and size, it worked out, and Kyle Pitts has sort of been stuck trying to be a traditional tight end, which was never really in the cards for him. So I expect there to be some formations there where you'll see Kyle Pitts playing in the slot with London and Mooney on the outside. You'll see maybe Charlie Warner come in and play a more traditional tight end role. They do have a lot of wide receivers that are going to be competing for a final roster spot here. Casey Washington, Chris Blair, Kadarius Hodges, who's had one really good year where it looked like, oh man, he might be the guy, and then it just kind of faded away. Philip Dorsett keeps finding his way onto rosters. But I think there'll also be a lot of formations where you get Bijan Robinson, one of the best, if not the best, receiving running back in the NFL. A true all-around weapon that you're going to see catching it out of the backfield, screen passes. He's going to line up as a slot receiver. They'll run him in motion to the outside, and they will do that while also having Tyler Algier on the field, who gets a 77 grade for me as a receiving back. He is the best backup running back in the NFL. He's probably one of the best backup running backs in the NFL for the last 15 years. It's hard for me to think of a backup running back who is a better player than Tyler Algier. Granted, that means he's probably not going to be on the team all that much longer, if he even makes it throughout the whole year, but his ability to bring running back one capabilities out of the backfield in all aspects of the game is a huge advantage that this roster has and that this weapons group has, because it allows you to diversify things so much. And that's also going to help your young quarterback. The fact that you're going to force defenses to have to continuously pre-snap identify where guys are, figure out the right matchups in your secondary. Linebackers are going to have to figure out where the tight ends are, where the running backs are, and get them matched up properly. Safeties are going to have to figure out, do I have to come down because of running backs, but where do I have to go? And there's going to be a lot of moving parts for the defense that they're going to have to figure out, and it's going to give a huge advantage to this offense to be able to have all this stuff to diversify the playbook. and the strategy and the play calling, and you just never know what this team is going to hit you with because they have so many different options. And there could be a situation where they have so many options that they don't really know what to do with them all, and it sort of creates like a bit of a cluster F in the strategizing and in the week-to-week play calling, that it could all just blow up in their face and they won't actually be able to achieve what this talent level should achieve. We kind of saw that last year and over the last couple of years, even back with the Arthur Smith days. Arthur Smith obsessed with, I know we got Drake London and Kyle Pitts, but man, how are we going to get this tight end for the ball in the red zone type of an offensive strategy? There's obviously not that going on now, but it's a real great situation that hopefully Zach Robinson can take advantage of. And Zach Robinson can almost maybe use this to trick the entire league into thinking he's a much better offensive coordinator than what he actually is, and a much better offensive mind than what he actually is. And again, going and focusing really on these running backs, you see it there. Bijan Robinson gets a 94 grade, one of the best running backs in the league. He's like a top 3, top 4 running back in the entire league, as just a straight up hand him the ball and watch him go to work. Tyler Algier is arguably in the top 20, top 15 in terms of his ability. And the fact that you're able to create packages where they're both on the field, you're able to keep them both fresh, and they're both kind of different in their ways. Like Tyler Algier brings more of a power aspect to your game, while Bijan Robinson is much more of like a finesse type of a player who does have some power aspects to him, but he's much more of he's going to outrun guys, he's going to juke them, he's going to hit holes, change the direction really fast. Tyler Algier is more likely to just kind of run right through you, and he had a great rookie season. And then Arthur Smith just had to bring in Bijan, which it's really worked out in diversifying the run game. Not much going on behind them, and I don't know that having this type of combination is something that can last for this team, especially because I think Tyler Algier, you look at some of the top teams in the league who may not have like a true top running back, who may be looking like, okay, maybe we're an RB1 away from being a real threat in the league, or maybe someone picks up an injury. I mean, I'm looking at teams like the Washington Commanders, who, if Brian Robinson gets an injury, why wouldn't they go get Tyler Algier? Give up a 3rd round pick for him. He probably could yield you a 3rd round pick, which would look great for Atlanta. I know it would be great for the team that was getting him. You got a team like the Rams, who, Kyron Williams can't keep himself healthy. What does that look like? There's a lot of good teams that I think are going to be scoping out Tyler Algier as a real actual option for them in the upcoming season before the trade deadline. Because you do have Bijan here, which is why Atlanta is going to be open to probably doing that. Who 231 carries just in zone, 1,456 yards, 4.8 a carry, 14 touchdowns, 82 first downs, 70 missed tackles forced by Bijan Robinson, 920 yards after contact. So he's difficult to bring down. He's going to beat you. 300 touches, a zone and gap. He is everything that you want in a running back, and it's just a matter of hoping that he stays healthy. He's really played up to that top 10 pick. People were really afraid when he win the top 10. They're like, there's no way he can live up to this. And then, they're like, oh, Saquon Barkley kept getting hurt. Ezekiel Elliott didn't really have that long of a run. Leonard Fournette didn't have that long of a run. There's very, very few running backs that are drafted in the 1st round, especially in the top 10. Bijan's really worked out. He's made Arthur Smith look like a genius, at least in that sense, for picking him up. He's got it all in every aspect. And then again, going back to Tyler Algier, you can tell I'm a big fan of his. Even the 644 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, 37 missed tackles forced out of those 134 carries. He only had 3 touchdowns. He had 43 first downs. 494 of his 644 yards were after contact, which is a tremendous number to have as well. Him and Bijan both very, very good at forcing missed tackles, which really helps. Which is, again, this is a group that's really going to help out having a young quarterback. This is the kind of thing that you want to really present to a young quarterback. On top of having you want him to have a good defense that's going to keep the scores low get him on the field, and then you want a good running game where they can lean on that. They can shorten the game. They can stay ahead of schedule where it's not going to be these 3rd and long situations all the time. You want to be able to hand the ball off on 1st down and get 5 yards and then be dealing with a 2nd and 5 where you can hand the ball off again, or you can run any play you want now at that point, and the quarterbacks can be able to just make a smart decision. Don't got to force the ball anywhere. That's where this running back group really is going to raise up this entire offense and its potential in an overall sense. Now we're going to get to the offensive line, and this is what I really talked and touched about early on in the video. They are tied for 10th in pass blocking, tied for 7th in run blocking. Just a really good group. A group that I'm a fan of this group. But this was a group put together for right-handed quarterbacks, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, etc. Now you got Michael Penix. So now you get a guy like Jake Matthews, who is one of the best pass-blocking left tackles in the league, who now is your front-side pass protector. So his role becomes a little bit different here. Now, do you have to worry about front-side protection? Absolutely not, which is a great advantage to have. Nonetheless, you want to have great pass blockers out there. He gave up 30 pressures on 636 snaps, 5 sacks, took 8 penalties. He's had better seasons, but he's still one of the better guys at this role. And now with a left-handed quarterback, his 75 run ability kind of changes things up here a little bit, because now you're moving in different ways. Your responsibilities become a little bit different in certain running concepts. So it'll be interesting to see how that grade sort of goes up and down throughout the year. They also have a solid left guard in Matthew Bergeron. We'll see how he adjusts to that position as well. Drew Dahlman left, so their center is now Ryan Nuzeel, who got a lot of work in last year. But Dahlman was such a great run blocker that they do lose a little bit in that sense. What they don't lose in run blocking at all is in Chris Lindstrom, who is probably the best run blocking offensive lineman in the league. Gets a 95 grade. He's been fantastic for this team. He's an A+ in zone, A+ in gap. They ran mostly a zone running scheme last year, and I expect that obviously to continue. It's just now Lindstrom is also now a backside pass protector at the guard position. Is he going to be working singled up here on the backside? I do expect opposing teams to maybe want to attack Bergeron and Nuzeel rather than Lindstrom in terms of where the double teams are coming from. I expect them to scheme it, so Nuzeel is probably helping Bergeron out, even though Bergeron, I think, it's a little bit extra than Lindstrom in pass blocking. I think it's just, in terms of what a floor looks like, Lindstrom is obviously significantly higher. And now you got the new backside protector in Caleb McGarry, who went from being a run blocking specialist right tackle, front side pass protector, to now protecting the blind side of the quarterback. And he is not a great pass blocker by any means. I don't know. He's like backup quality. I look at Jack Nelson, the rookie, who comes in. I think he comes in with a much better pass blocking. Obviously, McGarry's experience, and you kind of know what you're going to get from him, especially in the run game. He had a bit of a down year, to be honest, last year. He was one of the best right tackles in terms of run blocking, best tackles in general in the league for the last couple seasons leading up to last year. Again, sort of a down year. We'll see if he can bounce back here. Maybe, they're going to switch it up now, and it's going to make his job a little bit easier. You're going to see him, especially in the zone blocking scheme in particular. If they're going to run the zone blocking scheme to the left side, his responsibility is going to come up and get those backside linebackers, help with the double teams on the 3 tech on the left side, get up to that second level. He does have the athleticism to do that. And how it's going to help him on the right side now, where he's going to be facing a lot of the better defensive ends in the league that he wasn't necessarily facing before, because teams will usually put their best pass rusher on the backside. That's why a lot of teams focus on getting a great left tackle with great pass protection, because that's teams are going to attack the quarterback's blind side. Now, Caleb McGarry, for the first time in his career, is going to be regularly facing the best pass rusher on the opposing team from the defensive end position. That could be a huge red flag for this team, because it's just not something Caleb McGarry's ever had to do. He's always had the tight end help on the front side. He's always had the running back help chip him on the front side because he's had that solid left tackle opposite of him who's been able to do much of the work by himself, being one of the upper echelon players. So that's going to be a huge adjustment for this offense. It's going to be a huge adjustment for these players and how they account for that. Because you don't, with the weapons that you have that we just covered, you don't want to be running a lot of max protection. You don't want to keep an extra guy in. You want to use all these guys. That diversification of the weaponry that you have. You want to use all of that. And if McGarry puts you in a position where you can't do that, then that does hold the offense back. And I think this could all end up being just chatter one way or another. McGarry could do very well in this role. There are worse backside protecting tackles in the NFL that are going to be starting for sure, at least from a projection standpoint, from my point of view. But this could turn into an absolute disaster on the backside for Michael Penix, which will then affect him and affect the way they run the offense. It'll become a much more short game for the offense in order to account for that. You won't have as many different weapons out there. You won't be able to throw Bijan Robinson out there as much. Maybe you're going to be running a lot bigger formations and have a blocking tight end come in and help out. You don't want that to be the situation. So how the offensive line coach and Zach Robinson work together to get Caleb McGarry up to blindside protection speed, basically, is going to be a key aspect of this offensive line, how they produce as an offense overall based upon that singular aspect. This is like the one situation of the one bad apple ruins the batch, that it could become a thing. I think it's something that people should be really paying attention to with this offense. People are going to be so focused on Michael Penix, but Caleb McGarry is a huge spotlight player on this offense that's going to be a determining factor more so than ever before as to the level of success this offense might be able to achieve. So overall, it is the 24th ranked offense for me coming in. The pass offense is ranked 27th, and it is because we don't really know what we're getting with Michael Penix. So it does kind of drag it down. Now, granted, 27th does look bad. If you saw the Excel sheet that I put together, you would see, it's really, really close. Like Michael Penix playing like a top 20 quarterback would shoot this overall passing offense like on the fringe of top 10. Just so we're clear. Michael Penix just needs to raise himself 7 or 8 spots in this ranking, and it drastically shifts this because there is such a log jam in this range of like 27 to like 15. It is a log jam that's really determined by the expectations of what the quarterbacks are going to be doing, and some of the offensive lines are just a little bit better and have a little bit more project to be a little bit more confidence. But the run offense, 5th in the league, fantastic group there, and the offensive coordinator, him being a little bit better, will help raise the overall grade of this offense as well. Now it's on to the defense, and this is the side of the ball where it's expected that Raheem Morris makes the biggest impact. And we're going to start with the defensive line and the edge rushers here. And Arnold Ebiketie basically is the only one who didn't seem to be scapegoated on this defense from last year. I think he's going to get a lot of playing time, even though they did draft 2 guys to basically be the long-term replacements. It'll be interesting to see how they use them, though, because one that they drafted is a more traditional true edge rusher, and the other one is Jalen Walker, who is viewed with a higher upside than obviously some of James Pierce, who got drafted after him. But Jalen Walker was off-ball linebacker and then took 249 snaps from the defensive line. and took all of them from outside the tackle. So a true outside linebacker, 3-4 outside linebacker pass rusher. Was 48th in win percentage from that in that role in college football amongst edge rushers. He had 22 hurries, he had 34 pressures. So in less than 250 snaps, having 34 pressures, that's fine. It was a conversion for him. The way I look at it is sort of the same way that we saw with like Hassan Reddick, who when he was drafted, people went, maybe he should just be, a 3-4 outside linebacker. They tried to play him as that, and they tried to play him as inside linebacker. They moved him around so much, and they ended up settling in as like a 3-4 outside linebacker, blitzing off-ball linebacker type, which I think Jalen Walker is. I don't really feel as fondly about Jalen Walker as it seems the league did. I can understand why they felt that way about him. And I think his ability to just be a sure thing as a productive off-ball linebacker does help this team, because they do need help in that aspect as well, and we'll get to that. But he was drafted, believe me, to be a pass rusher or an edge rusher. That's where he's going to play. Arnold Ebiketie, I think, is still the best guy. So I think he's the most likely number one, at least early in the season. They do have a lot of these like number 2, number 3 types, like a Khalid Kareem who can be a good backup. They drafted Braylon Trice last year. Leonard Floyd is kind of just old man, whatever. Zach Harrison, who is like a 4-3 and kind of a 3-4 interior defensive lineman. He's kind of undersized in that role. He was fine in playing as an inside defensive player. I think that's where he's going to settle in here in this defense as well. David Onyemata, very good starting quality in the run game. Grady Jarrett was gone. He's in Chicago now. They drafted Ruka Horohoro last year, so we'll see how he slides in and fits in all of this. They're hoping that he can become a part of this, but Kentavious Street is a good depth player, very good in the run game as well. I think he's going to get some playing time on early downs in particular. And I think that Arnold Ebiketie will sort of become more of a true just pass rushing situation guy, because I think they'll be very comfortable playing Jalen Walker and James Pierce at the same time in a defensive and edge position on early downs. Maybe Zach Harrison gets some edge work in that scenario as well. But James Pierce Jr. is somebody who really tanked his own draft stock with sort of these off the field effort concerns and issues that people were thinking about with him. He was 7th in pass rush win rate though in college football last year. So all the concerns are in really his attitude, because he's got all the things that tell you that he's going to be really good at the next level. He had 8 sacks, 55 pressures, took most of his snaps again from the outside. He kicked in a little bit for like a handful of snaps, but he understands how to be a pass rusher. He's got a variety of pass rushing moves and abilities, so I'm not overly concerned about him. If he just buys into the NFL system and just works hard, then he should be. He probably is going to turn out to be the best edge rusher on the team at that point. I think he is a phenomenal talent. But as a totality, they are the 31st pass rushing defensive line in the entire league still. There's just a lot to be proven here. You want Arnold Ebiketie to be like, okay, lit a fire under his ass. They drafted 2 guys that play his position in the first round. They traded a first round pick next year to get one of them. So they aren't picking in the first round next year because they did this. So that's a huge message to Arnold Ebiketie. You got to step this up, because whether you got to figure out a way to stay on this team or to get paid by somebody else big. So it's nut cutting time for you. Is Jalen Walker going to be able to play a edge rushing role in the NFL, or is he going to have to be an off-ball linebacker? That's a huge question mark that has to be determined. Can David Onyemata carry the interior defensive line as the defensive tackle number 1 and play like a nose tackle role on this team successfully? Can sort of like these undersized guys like Morgan Fox and Zach Harrison step up as good rotational pieces for them? And is James Pierce going to pan out the way that people, I think, like me, are expecting him to, which is to come in as a solid player, but for him to be the best overall edge rusher on your team as a rookie, that's a rough situation to start with, and that falls into the hands of Raheem Morris in particular, who was brought in specifically to improve this group. You know, he got a huge reputation off of Von Miller and Aaron Donald, and now he has to make guys. He's not just inheriting these types of great talents that were like these true blue chip, can't miss guys. These are guys that all need development. These are all guys that need to be put in positions to succeed in order to gain the confidence and gain the abilities and hone their skill sets. So the coaching staff needs to make this work. They've put enough pieces now in the last 2 drafts in front of these guys, between Pierce, Walker, Ahoro, Braylon Trice. They've done their due diligence here as an organization. So now it is falling on the coaching staff to make this group work and get them out of the basement of what their projection currently is. Now moving on to the more traditional off-ball linebackers. They're 25th in coverage, 24th in run defense. There's really 3 guys that are going to be a part of this rotation truly here. I think Caden Ellis, he is your linebacker 1. He does do a lot of variety of work here, and my concern is that him and Jalen Walker are a redundant pairing. As in, Caden Ellis kind of plays the exact same role that Jalen Walker played at Georgia. So what does that do to Caden Ellis? You know, because if Caden Ellis is expected to just be like your zone traditional off linebacker defender in passing situations, well, he gave up 52 of 64 catches for 3 touchdowns and 107.9 passer rating. He had 43 pressures, so as a blitzer, great. I think that having him and being able to blitz him as an off-ball linebacker in this defense is a huge advantage for Ulbrich and Raheem Morris to strategize around, especially when you now have a lot more depth, you presume, at the traditional edge rusher situations. But what does this look like when you have to drop a linebacker into coverage? Because he's your best cover linebacker, even though he's not exactly a great cover linebacker even at all. And you look at maybe some other guys to fill that role in his place. As a run defender, he sort of gives you the exact same: 108 tackles, 37 assists. He had 22 missed tackles for a 13.2% missed tackle percentage. He was 54th in stops percentage as well. 794 linebacker snaps, but he took 253 snaps as a defensive end. So there is that. So I think that number is going to drop, and probably drop significantly, because all those snaps are going to go to Jalen Walker. So how is he going to react being just an off-ball linebacker? That's going to be the true test for him here. Because if he doesn't perform well as a true just Mike linebacker, which is really what he's being put in to do, then it kind of falls around these other depth pieces here. So I think in pass coverage, converted safety, former Raider Divine Diablo, that's where he settles in here. So maybe he is more your Mike linebacker in this defense. Is he your green dot guy, or is it JT Bertrand, who you're just never hoping to see ever in pass coverage situations? He's solely just a early down traditional run stuffing linebacker. Or is Troy Anderson finally going to step up? Is Josh Woods going to find a way to step up? There's just a lot of, well, I hope somebody does something, because now Caden Ellis and Jalen Walker are really in direct competition with one another, unless Caden Ellis can develop into a traditional off-ball linebacker. Then you got converted safety, and the only real traditional linebacker you got, which is J.D. Bertrand. So, and I think J.D. Bertrand might have played safety for a year in college. He might have. I might be getting confused with somebody else, but he's the most traditional linebacker that you have that's actually capable of being on the field in certain situations. So maybe you get better coverage out of him and he becomes your number one linebacker, and then you just get a rotation going around him. But these types of roster moves does affect the upside of this linebacker group that you've built in years previous. So, Caden Ellis, he needs a question mark, man. He needs a question mark. There's a lot of question marks on this defense. As you guys can see, the front seven, they need to be coached up. They need to have their skills honed, and this is where coaching comes into play. We've heard Mike Tomlin talk about how a lot of coaches are just afraid to coach. They just want the good players right away and then just hope the good players do what they got to do. There is a lot of potential here in this front seven in particular. In these linebackers, a lot of potential here. It needs to be realized. And that's on the coaching staff at this point, on how they design this defense, how they strategize this defense, how they create, disguises in the defense to help these guys out. Now we're moving on to the star aspect of this defense, which is the defensive backs. Number 2 in coverage for me, 12th against the run. They've added some really good depth through the draft. They've added some good depth in free agency. They've had guys develop here. This has been a real success for this team on the defense side of the ball, where there hasn't been a whole lot of success previously. And we'll start with cornerback number 1. It is A.J. Terrell. Gets an 86 grade for me. That's, he's not like a Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley or Patrick Surtain. He does struggle in zone coverage. He has struggled in zone coverage. But in man coverage, he's very good. And I think he has the potential to continuously improve in that role. 45 catches given up on 67. You want to bring that down significantly. You'd like to sort of hover closer to like 50% and under-ish. If a corner's given up like 55% or less of his catches, that's a great number. Once you get into this area where it's, what's 45? I didn't do the math. I'm going to do the math live here for you guys. We're going to do the math live. It's 45 divided by 67. So he gives up 67% of his catches, of his targets. Not great. You want to bring that number way down. So it's a bit of a down year for a guy who's got a lot of talent. He only gave up 2 touchdowns. He only gave up 466 yards, just over 10 yards a catch. So going up against wide receiver ones the whole time, that's not exactly bad by my estimation. I think that can continuously get better. Being a cornerback is also extremely difficult in the NFL because you're going to have stretches. I've talked about this before in previous videos, like with guys like Sauce Gardner. You're going to have stretches where it's just like, man, I just can't get it right. Taking too many penalties, or I'm getting beat on double moves too much. I'm just, the ball, it's not falling my way. I'm in perfect coverage, but the quarterback just throws a perfect ball. All that kind of stuff is going to keep happening. It's just how you keep bouncing back. I think A.J. Terrell has significantly more positives than negatives in that sense, and he is a true cornerback 1, maybe more of a upper half of the league cornerback 1, maybe hovering in that top 10 range, maybe right at number 10. I'm sure if we worked it out, he'd be in that range as well. He's got good compliments around him too. Mike Hughes, who started his career really slow in Minnesota and then sort of like late now. He's like found a nice little skill set here. He sort of found himself later on in his career, and he's settled into a really nice spot here. I think he's going to be a good outside corner for them. Clark Phillips II, I think, came into his own last year really well. Played really aggressive. I think you're going to see him play in the slot maybe more so this year. Him and Natron Brooks are going to be competing, I think, for that role. But he was as good in man coverage as you can get last year. I thought he was great in man coverage last year. Only gave up 2 touchdowns, gave up only 28 of his 41 targets. That's a great number. That's where you want it to be. Okay, that's where you want it to be. Let's see, 28. Okay, never mind. That's not great. Cancel what I just said. But it's not a lot of catches. He's not giving a lot of catches, not giving a lot of targets because he was doing so well in man coverage. I will say that. That's what I'm trying to say here. 292 yards. So it's fine. It's fine. You hope that he can settle in a nice slot role because he does play aggressively in the run game for a guy his size. 2 pass breakups. That's fine. Natrone Brooks is direct competition in the slot, but he doesn't play well against the run. And I think that's going to really hold him back. They got Kobe Bryant, another Kobe Bryant. Shout out to everyone for being super creative when their last name is Bryant, apparently. He could be sneaky competition. He played the run really well in college. So I think he's somebody that could maybe sneak into more of a starter role there. Mike Ford and Keith Taylor, more veteran presences there. You'll see Mike Ford on special teams, I think, more than anything else. Then you get to the safety group, and it's my favorite safety in the league. It's Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates the third, to be specific. Gets a 91 grade in pass coverage, 84 against the run. Gave up less than a 72 passer rating in coverage, 6 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, 249 yards only given up. That is great from the safety spot. Took a lot of safety snaps, took a lot of box safety snaps, played in the slot a lot. This guy played everywhere. He was all over the place. Great in man coverage as well. He's a tremendous asset for you to have. Is everything that they wanted him to be when they signed him coming out of Cincinnati. And we're going to get to Cincinnati real soon about all the mistakes they've made personnel-wise and organization-wise. I think letting Jesse Bates walk is one of the most significant ones they've made because he's been phenomenal. And they've given him a great pairing. Now, he used to have Richie Grant, who didn't really work out. So they threw some assets here at the safety position, and one of them was Xavier Watts, who, to me, coverage-wise, run support-wise, was a phenomenal player coming out. I thought he could have snuck in early second round, just because, safeties usually don't go all that often in the first round. We only saw one go last year, but for me, I liked Xavier Watts better than Malachi Starks. I liked him better than Nicky Manwari as well. So this was a phenomenal pickup for him, and his ability to sort of play everywhere as well. Him and Jesse Bates together, I think are going to be a phenomenal combination. They also kind of hedged their bets here by getting Billy Bowman, who, fairly drafted with an upside, needs some work. But, you'll see worse safeties in the league play this year. So there's some potential there as well. Then there's Jordan Fuller, who can come in, be some run support help as well. DeMarco Hellams has gotten some snaps before. Don't really know where he matches up, though. So he gets the NAs in terms of his grades. It's sort of a lot of question marks there, especially because they drafted 2 guys that play his position, brought in Jordan Fuller. The chances of him being on the team, despite getting some action previously in previous years, not very likely. But what a phenomenal job in team building, at least through the secondary, that this organization has done. For all the mistakes that they've made, all the lack of development that they've created on the defensive side of the ball, this is a group they've really gotten right. And it really helps with the upside of this defense, because when you have these guys that are this talented here, if you figure out that pass rush that was ranked 31st, if you get that pass rush into the top 20, you got the number 2 pass coverage defensive back group. This group is going to eat like crazy because there's not going to be a whole lot. If you can't create a whole lot of time for a quarterback to navigate the defense, get to that third read, then this defensive back group is going to eat them alive. He's going to eat quarterbacks alive. They got ball hawks all over the place with Terrell and Jesse Bates, even Xavier Watts. It's going to be a bloodbath if they can figure out that front four with this group. This group, I can tell you right now, they are begging for Jalen Walker and James Pierce to work out and to work out fast. Because if they can work out fast, they know that they're all looking at hitting their performance bonuses at the end of the year with interceptions, with overall turnovers forced, with yards and catches given up, touchdowns allowed. They're going to have career years if they can figure it out. They have that much talent. But overall, it is the tied for 21st overall defense, 21st in pass defense, 26th in run defense. Again, it's really all dragged down by that front seven that we talked about. There's just too much not happening with that group yet that it's hard, that's dragging down the overall projection of what this defense should be, even with a middle of the pack defensive coordinator. But what it does say, like I've been hammering home, they figure out that front four in particular, that defensive line in passing situations. This could become a deadly defense. It really could. Now running through the schedule here, and it's a bit of a gauntlet in the first half of the year for Atlanta, which is why another reason they kind of rank this low. They get Carolina on the road early. They get Miami at home. But there's a lot of teams that I'm really high on early on in this schedule that I just don't know that their defense in particular, that they have the bodies to keep up. You know, Tampa with all the guys they have on offense, you know, with a quality offensive line. Minnesota, same story. Washington, same story with the addition of Tunsil and the ability of Jaden Daniels to run. Buffalo, same thing. San Francisco with the diversification of their offense. You know, they get Miami. Miami's got a lot of offensive line questions. So that sort of helps them balance it out as they develop this group throughout the year and figure out the right combinations. Then the second half of the year, you know, they get Indy, you know, who they got some quarterback issues that we've covered already. They're kind of an injury away on that offensive line too, from that thing falling apart from being a top echelon group to not. They get Carolina at home. They get New Orleans twice. They get the Jets. They get Seattle. They get Arizona late. You know, some teams that do have some offensive line questions that can, as their defensive line hopefully gets it together, hopefully as they find more combinations, get more comfortable, figure out the skill sets, figure out situational rotations, it should be able to build, and that makes the 7.5 over under from Vegas a push for me, because I feel like 8-9 wins could be a thing for them, especially with that second half of the season. But if they can't get it together, then I could easily see them being under it. You know, if Penix and McGarry can't get it together and Penix struggles, you know, if the defensive line can't get it together, they pick up an injury in the secondary, a key injury in the secondary, and the defense kind of falls apart, I could see it also not being great as well. So it's kind of like I don't want to touch Atlanta this year in terms of their win-loss record. So overall, they are my 25th ranked team, 24th offense, tied for 21st defense, 29th ranked head coach. Just too many key parts of this team are yet to be determined in terms of the quality of them. And so it's hard to start the year thinking as highly of them as what they could possibly turn into come the end of the season, for example. And there you have it, my number 25 team in the 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Atlanta Falcons. Thanks for watching. You guys made it this far. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already subscribed. I mean, you watched the whole video, or you at least skipped through the chapters all the way to this part. So, you know, just to help a guy out. My number 24 team's coming soon, and it's a doozy. So I will see you guys with that next video next time.